Good evening. So, it's been a few days off from doing any videos. Had some business to attend to where I was out of town, so now I'm back. Let's talk about fighting anxiety, depression symptoms. Okay, and PTSD falls in the category as well. I have some longer videos planned on the topic. We're just going to talk about this, though, for a couple minutes. Excuse me. So, the thing too, PTSD symptoms show up like anxiety or depression. And anxiety and depression have some similarities in their origins, which is why they get lumped together, and they tend to be treated with the same types of medications. So, throat's a little dry today, so you have to excuse me. It's the weather. And of course, then we got, the weather, the time change that happened a while back, the lack of sunlight, all that stuff can lead to this lack of motivation. And that's really what we're talking about. So sometimes it's just kind of being in a funk, but for some people it can be a really extreme. Like you don't even want to get out of bed. You don't want to talk to people. You can't really function like a human being. Self-care becomes a problem. All these different things. So, there's motivation and action work together, okay? So, to do some massive action requires motivation. However, if you're having whether it's clinical or not, you're having an internal problem with depression, anxiety, or PTSD, or just the blues from the winter, whichever it may be, that motivation isn't there. You have a strong desire, but you just can't reach down and grab a hold of it, and that's the problem. So you're looking to find this motivation for this action, but the motivation just isn't there. It doesn't show up. So sometimes you got to work backwards. You have to work from the point of action to create some of that motivation. And then that motivation creates more action. More action creates more motivation. And it keeps going, okay? It pulls you out of that state of low motivation, that depressive, anxious state, okay? So, a lot of times people will sit, take long breaks, take many days. It's hard for them to snap out of these feelings because they're waiting for that motivation to happen. So I'm going to suggest a different route, and this is what warriors and warrior classes have understood for a very long time. I have a theory that this is why many military people are okay when they're enlisted, but when they get out, a lot of these problems show up. But why didn't they show up quite so much? I mean, they do show up, but why were they able to cope and deal while they were still enlisted? And the reason they were able to cope and deal while they're still enlisted is because some sort of command chain was forcing them to take action, forcing them to show up for PT, forcing them to show up for formations, giving them duties to do, and so forth. And so you had somebody in the military, a chain of command, that they've been behavioral conditioned since basic training, telling them what to do for action, so essentially forcing it. And so that action then forced motivation, and for a lot of soldiers, not every single one, they were okay at coping with these symptoms while they're enlisted. But when they get out, there's nobody now forcing them, right, to take that action. They have to do it on their own. So they're waiting for that motivation to occur, and the motivation never shows up. So the answer again, and I'm going to have more steps detailed out, and I'm doing more research on this stuff still. Each individual will need different things. However, when the motivation isn't there, and you take a break and it's still not there, you have to take massive action, even though you don't want to. Now, you're not going to just go out and nail that big business deal or that big interview or whatever from a depressive state. So it has to compound and start small. So maybe so back to the warrior classes. Okay, warrior classes worked on their physical health, fitness, and their appearance. And that was a trend across cultures. So you look at the samurai culture. They were very big on powdering, even using makeup, doing their hair. I'm not suggesting you use makeup, okay, as a male. But, they did what was within what was considered respectable for a male in that culture and respectable appearance. They did those things to work on their appearance, no matter what. And they lived the samurai lifestyle was very hard, especially if they're at war. I mean, you're talking close combat, watching friends die, having villages get raided, children, women dying. I mean, a lot of bad stuff I'm sure that they had been through. Yet, they were able to pull out of a lot of these issues because of their ways and their steps of handling it. And so one thing they always did, because it was something they could always control, was they worked on their health and their appearance. So their diet, their exercise and physical training programs, and their appearance was a big thing. They woke up in the morning and they went through their morning routine and they worked on their physical appearance. Now there's other things they did too, right? But that's just something I wanted to mention that gets neglected, right? We talk about meditation, talk about different, mental exercises, but nobody talks about the appearance aspect of things. Let's look at Viking culture. So Vikings weren't the savages. I mean, they're pretty savage, right? But they were like savage gentlemen. Okay, in fact, one of them went over to France, took over, and was king of France for a minute, all right, and got all the ladies. The Vikings were known for getting all the ladies, okay? Now, part of the reason for that was because of their grooming standards, and it had been written in both English and French literature that these, savage, taller, gigantic, seafaring warriors also smelled good, okay? Also had grooming standards, were noted to take baths regularly, things that the other cultures that they were raiding didn't always do. Except for if we want to look at English nobility, your knights and some of your strongest warriors in the warrior class out in England and places like that, they were noted for their grooming standards. So you notice that lower classes and lower class warriors didn't have the grooming standards, but the grooming standards existed for the upper classes, okay? But the entire culture of Vikings, which were noted as being the most powerful warriors really in our his history, if you want to look at it like that, had these grooming standards. And I think that, and I'll stop there with the examples, but you start looking cross-culturally, warrior classes had grooming standards. Okay, they had these standards for their appearance because it helps combat that lack of motivation, which appears with PTSD, which appears with depression and anxiety. So if you're having that funk, start with little things. You're grooming, taking a shower. I know it sounds like a big deal, but take a shower. Make yourself smell good. Make yourself appear well. Make sure you get your workout in. Do your morning stretches and your morning routine. Get to the gym. These are things that you do when you work on your physicality and your appearance. That's the beginning of it. If I wake up in the morning, groom myself, and put on appropriate clothes for business, for example, if I put on a suit, for example, I mean, it's hard to walk around and not be successful when I'm wearing a pretty nice suit, And so, and it doesn't have to be a suit. I mean, it can be whatever, would be considered, appropriate appearance for your occupation. But paying attention to that stuff, if you're lying in bed and having a Netflix binge and you haven't showered in 2 days, it's kind of hard to dig deep now and find motivation. What we tend to do instead of finding motivation is we find distractions, which is really easy to do with social media and entertainment just at our fingertips. So, there's a lot more to be said about this topic, but to pull yourself out of that funk, you got to take action. Because if the motivation just isn't there, well, you got to do something. And then by doing stuff, that motivation then starts to show up. And so it starts off with your appearance and your physical health. And your mental health too, if you can do some meditation exercises. But, again, that appearance and physical part of it, that's the parts that get neglected. So if you're feeling in that funk, start actioning things. And start with the simple things. shower, groom your facial hair, smell nice, pick out an outfit. You know, it's things that warriors did in the past, and it's going to help you as you fight your daily battles today. All right, thanks for tuning in. Guys, have a great week, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.